Hello everyone, just Goran here and welcome to another Planet Zoo real life inspiration video. Today we are looking at a bunch of different Dwarf Caiman habitats. Both the Cuvier's Dwarf Caiman as well as Schneider's Dwarf Caiman, because why the hell not? Let's get started. And the first zoo we are looking at is Berkenhof Tropical Zoo. This is a small tropical zoo in the Netherlands, in Zeeland to be specific. And over here we have a small Cuvier's Dwarf Caiman enclosure. They've got a couple of fun signs, a way too big skull for a Cuvier's Dwarf Caiman, as a bit of theming. But yeah, the enclosure itself is nothing to really boast about. It's just a small pond with some rocks and a bit of a land area, kind of a ratio 50-50 land water. But over here we can see Dwarf Caiman right over there. Super awesome animals. Oh, they look so freaking cool. But yeah, this is kind of par for the course as far as habitats go, which we'll see as we get further into this video. They really don't get that much space in a lot of the zoos, which is a bit of a bummer, you know. It's always nice to see such an impressive animal in a impressive enclosure to suit them, just because it makes them seem more impressive if they got a cool enclosure, right? So next up we have Blijdorp, and Blijdorp is definitely one of the better ones. We are in the Oceanium, and over here we have kind of the Amazon section, the South America section, with a couple of aquariums with some Amazonian fish or South American fish. I really wouldn't know, I'm no expert. So over here, yeah, we've got one of those tanks, but who cares about fish? We're here for the caiman. So if we move to the next tank over here, we do get a small caiman enclosure, and it's got a nice little waterfall. It's got underwater viewing, which is always really cool. And it's still not huge, but it's slightly more spacious, and you get to appreciate the animal a little bit more. So this water is actually connected to the water of that enclosure we just saw. And you can see it over here. That's where the separation is, and that's also where the caiman is for some reason always hanging out. Like, I have footage of 4 different visits and he is always sitting over there on those rocks. As you can see, there's another trip. There he is once again. You can also see him underwater. Such a cool thing. Yeah. And here we can also see the silvery arowana, one of which has scoliosis or something. I don't know. But yeah. They're not in his tank anymore at the moment. He seems to be alone. He or she, I actually don't know. But yeah, they do sometimes put fish with them. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Blijdorp. Let's go to the next zoo. And the next zoo is Reptile Huis de Aarde, or Reptile House Earth in Breda in the Netherlands. And they've got their Cuvier's Dwarf Caiman upstairs. And no, that's not the tank right over there. It's this one. It's actually quite small. Like, I think this is one of the smallest in this video, which is really a bummer because I pride this reptile house for the space they give most of their animals. So yeah, I wonder why the Dwarf Caiman is kind of the exception to that rule. You can see it right over there. Really cool. It's still a nice looking enclosure, like it's in the same kind of style as the rest of this reptile house, which I'm a big fan of. It looks really cool. But yeah, it's weird. The dwarf crocodile has one of the biggest dwarf crocodile enclosures I've ever seen, and then you get to the caiman and it's just this little box. Next up is another reptile house Iguana in Vlissingen, which is also in Zeeland. And over here we have the caiman enclosure. It's nothing too big. This is a rescue center, so the enclosures are really not that impressive. It's just what the animal needs while they're in the reptile house's care. Again, we can see about a 50-50 ratio between land and water, so that seems to be the standard, especially in these smaller enclosures. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this, so let's keep going. And the next one we're looking at is Ouwehands Dierenpark, and over here we are in a walk-through green iguana enclosure, and from the walk-through green iguana enclosure we can also spot some caimans. So over here we have the iguana, really freaking cool. And in the back we can already see like the underwater viewing of the caiman over here. So yeah, there's a little bit of theming with like a little hut. There's also a bunch of climbing frames above for the iguana for when they're not on the visitor side. And there's some pacu, I think, swimming around in the water. So again, mixing it with some fish. And over here we can see the caiman itself looking super awesome. They're just so cool. I mean, what else is there to say about it? Looks like the land section is closed off at the moment. That is pretty interesting. I wonder why that is. And I also wonder if the caiman can get onto that little bridge section if it wants, or if that's for the keepers. It's pretty hard to tell from the footage that I took, which I apologize for. And yeah, at this point I was being called to leave the zoo because it was closing time. So on another trip I did notice this. Over here you can see some foam inside of the tree branches. I thought that was a pretty fun little detail. And then over here, yeah, just one more time. And there's the thumbnail. The caiman. So cool. So next up is the last Cuvier's Dwarf Caiman. This is the enclosure of ZieZoo in Volkel. And yeah, this is probably one of the better small enclosures. Like, of course, Blijdorp and Ouwehands have the nicest enclosures, also being large EAZA zoos. But actually, ZieZoo is also EAZA now. They recently joined the EAZA. So technically this falls under the same umbrella now. But yeah, this is definitely one of the better enclosures still. It's pretty spacious, despite being like a small reptile house type enclosure. They've got a nice large bath and a small land section around it. So not quite that 50-50 ratio that we've seen in other zoos. It also looks like they've got about 4 caiman in here, so that might be a bit much. Might kind of downplay the nice size of the enclosure a bit, but yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's move on to the Schneider's caiman. We are in Germany in AquaZoo Löbbecke, or Löbbecke, I don't quite know, and here we have a Schneider's caiman underwater viewing. And yeah, over here we can see they are quite similar to the Cuvier's Dwarf Caiman, only slightly bigger, slightly different shaped head from what I've read. I honestly can't really tell. To me they're almost the same, both Dwarf Caimans. And yeah, so this is a really fun little museum zoo. Well, I say fun, I didn't enjoy it that much. It was a bit too museum-like for me, especially also the enclosures. The setup of most of the enclosures in the zoo is very similar, with a few exceptions. And luckily the caiman enclosure over here is one of those exceptions. So you later on in the museum come to this raised land bridge in this kind of tropical house setting. And that is where you see what we just saw was a freshwater crocodile. And over here is the caiman enclosure that we just saw from underwater. Over there you can actually see the window we were looking through. And this is the enclosure from above. And it's honestly, this is just the best enclosure in this entire video. It is so freaking cool. I absolutely love this. And I think I might use this for some inspiration in Key Park, perhaps. It's going to be really cool. But yeah, that is the enclosure. And then if you keep going over here, you also see a little pond turtle enclosure. I'm just showing you this entire space because I'm not sure if I'm ever going to get around to making a video about this zoo. So I just want to share this with you because it's so. This was such a pleasant surprise in an otherwise kind of samey, dull museum with constantly the same room with fish tanks and things. This was such a nice breath of fresh air. Just look at how awesome this tropical house looks. Absolutely awesome. So let's move to the next zoo, which is also a very similar tropical house. And it's one we've already seen. This is the Zoo of Krefeld. And this was also in the sloth video, because there's also sloth in this tropical house. But yeah, just an absolutely awesome house. And we have a similar type of walking bridge going over this pond. And on one side of it is some turtles. And over here, as we pass this really cool raised viewing point, there is a caiman enclosure, again for the Schneider's caiman, of course. So we can see that right here. There's a couple of land sections, but the water in the front, it's shared with some turtles. I'm actually not sure which type of turtle that will be. But yeah, over here we can see the caiman. Super cool. I'm a big fan of this one as well. It's really cool. yeah, Germany got their Cayman exhibits down. So let's end the video with probably my least favorite. Maybe Reptile Zoo is worse, I don't know. But over here we are in the Oliemeulen, and we have a Schneider's Cayman exhibit, which is just tiny. it's really not great. Next to this is also a dwarf crocodile enclosure, which is very much on the small side. Yeah, it's not great, is it? I'm really not a fan, but do have to say, look at that boy. That is such an awesome looking animal. Yeah, I really wish the enclosure did it justice. But that is gonna be it from me today. Those were a bunch of different Cayman, Dwarf Caiman enclosures. Hope you got some inspiration out of it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!